It's the Queen City Music Podcast, the podcast devoted to the local music scene in Charlotte, North Carolina. Here's your host, Matthew Ablan.
Hello and welcome to episode 10 of the Queen City Music Podcast. Before moving ahead, I wanted to take a moment and dedicate this podcast to the memory of Nathan Richie. If you don't know, it is his voice at the top of the podcast introducing the show. Sadly, Nathan was recently killed in a vehicular traffic accident while riding his motorcycle. The news came as a shock to his friends, family, and even acquaintances who knew him. He was a friend to the QCMP, and his kind spirit will be sorely missed. This month, I'm pretty excited to have with me classical guitarist Robert Teixeira. Robert is a performer, teacher, and composer here in the Charlotte area. Hi, Bob. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Pleasure to be here.
So, Bob, are you originally from the Charlotte area?
No, I'm from New England. I grew up in Massachusetts and went to school up there for my undergraduate degree, and then I did my graduate work down at Florida State University, and I sort of never made it back.
How long have you been in Charlotte for?
It's been a long time already. I moved here in 2000, so it's
so quite a while.
18 years, yeah.
So, what's your musical background? You say you were up in New England, and so were you playing guitar up there?
I certainly was, but you would probably identify with this. I had a typical American upbringing with guitar. You know, when you're 9 years old,
you're rocking out.
You don't know you don't know what you're going to do. I just remember going to Kmart and seeing the guitars on the wall and going, I want something like that. You know, something green. So I played other styles and had some traditional kind of lessons with the old guy in town, and then little by little I started to realize that this was a pretty good fit for me, and then I think I had a sort of a little bit of a shift when I started to listen to George Benson, and and there was that Breezin' album that came out, and then I started buying some of his older records, and it was just a sort of a tinge of a jazz period in my life, and while playing some rock bands and Hendrix and all that. So, it's just, like I said, a typical American upbringing. And I didn't even know what classical guitar was.
So how did you even get into classical?
You know that story, probably, because it happened a lot for everybody. When you went to college, they said, well, we'd love to have you, but you're going to have to study classical guitar.
Or jazz.
Yeah, or jazz. And so I did go there, and I started, first, I think I had to do 4 semesters of classical guitar. But by the end of the second semester, I was completely hooked. And it started to be a real change in direction for me.
Did you get exposed to some classical stuff through some of the players that you were listening to?
Interesting question. Say that one more time. Yeah.
Did you get exposed to classical guitar through some of the players that you listened to? So, for example, I know a few friends, they got into classical guitar through listening to Steve Howe from Yes. He would play like The Clap, or they listened to La Villa Strangiato, right. Or
like a classically.
Yeah, some finger style kind of tune.
Can I admit this? Although you're going to put this on the air, probably "Stairway to Heaven" was a little bit of that for me.
Yeah, that's everybody. Yeah, Jimmy Page, you couldn't get away from him.
Yeah, but that sort of that tinge of finger style. That was when I was in the 8th grade or something like that.
Oh wow. Okay.
So I realized, I can actually play that. And that was also one of those little tiny shifts. Like, I think I can maybe do this a little bit better, and it causes you to search for the next step.
It's interesting to me how different players come to, when they're as classical players, how they get into it. And for me, it was interesting. I remember clearly, it was like almost yesterday, I opened up the newspaper, and my grandfather was over that day, and he brought the newspapers, the New York Post, and there's a picture of Andre Segovia on the cover, and he had died. And me, I was all into guitar as a kid. My grandfather looks at me and he goes, "Do you know who that was?" And I go, "No." He goes, "That's Segovia. He's the greatest guitar player who ever lived." I didn't know anything about it. I was like, "Really? Okay." And I went out and bought a cassette, and I still have that cassette to this day. And then when I was studying like yourself, was getting to college. My private guitar teacher told me, I was like, well, I don't want to get into jazz, and I always wanted to play fingerstyle.
Right.
So that's kind of how I got into it.
It's so funny that you mentioned that, because I have a grandfather story too with an introduction to Segovia.
Uh-huh.
I think I was probably 9 or 10 though, and just really couldn't take it in. But he sat me down, in front of the old black and white television with the rabbit ears, and there was Segovia. He was playing, and my grandfather said, "This is real guitar playing." Yeah, because my grandfather played, so he knew.
And I still think to this day, I mean, I'm not going to knock any other style of playing, but playing classical is a really difficult endeavor. I think it's probably the hardest style and one of the most demanding styles, at least for me.
Yeah, in certain ways, I agree. I like to think of it as at this point in my life as a style of playing, an approach to the guitar,
right?
And so that you can use it as you cross that bridge into other styles. But I will say this, the people have said this for years: if you can play classical, you can play anything.
Right.
All right. The huge false statement. The only way that you can play good rock and roll is to practice good rock and roll. The only way that you can play a jazz player is to have your brain turned on that way. So I always kind of like to talk to others about different styles of playing with complete respect. Not one from being above others.
Right.
And it's a great way to meet people and have some middle ground.
Well, any style is really demanding. I just think, particularly the one thing about classical that makes it a bit more demanding is the cleanliness that is really needed.
It's crazy
in the play.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's beautiful, and I think that's part of the draw, part of my personality, your personality. I'm sure there was like a neatness and a beauty of sound and connected line and really being able to shape something over time, not just spontaneously create it, but really dig in and produce a product, that is well thought out and all that, So it's we mentioned before the interview that I was toying with some jazz playing, and it's funny to me that my brain, number one, isn't wired for that anymore. Right. I'm hardwired as a classical player, so it's a real hard shift to make. After playing jazz for a bit, I get drawn back to the classical.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this is why I did this. This
right.
is why I chose this as my life direction. It's so beautiful, and then when you're playing something and you can't put it down because one note just begs for another.
I tell you what, even if I'm not playing classical, I've got to play fingerstyle for a while, because if you're not a guitar player, you're probably not going to understand this, but the looseness of your hands from playing fingerstyle, classical, especially the stretches and everything, your hands get so loose and relaxed. And when I don't play fingerstyle for a while, let's say I'm just playing strumming chords for a week or two, my hands tighten up.
Oh.
And there's a relaxation that occurs in the joints and in the muscles when I'm playing classical for a few days, and it's fingerstyle. It just really works well for my hands.
There's definitely a keep in shape kind of thing that we have to do, that's athletic almost. Yeah. I took a vacation with my family last summer and was gone for 5 weeks, and I sort of paid for that all fall long, just trying.
You didn't touch the guitar for 5 weeks?
A little bit, not much. And there was a re-entry that was kind of a shocker, because right when I got back, I had to perform something. So,
were you jonesing? Were you like a drug addict coming back playing guitar? Like, I need to have something in my hands.
You always miss it, but sometimes it's nice to take a break.
Oh, yeah. No, it is. But I know sometimes if I go too long, I'm like, I need to play.
Right. We'll be traveling this summer. We'll be in Europe and Switzerland, and 3 weeks is too long. So instruments come,
Right.
And it's such a pain to travel with them, but you have to have them. Yeah.
So we were talking before we started recording, and we were talking about playing as a solo classical guitarist, and then also playing in an ensemble. What do you prefer to do? Well,
if you look at what I've done for the last 15 years or so, it's pretty much always playing with others. So I've developed a musical ensemble with my dear friend Mary Akerman, who's a wonderful guitarist out of Atlanta. And my wife is a cellist, so we play together too. So those are sort of the two duos that I like to keep up and running.
Right.
And so to get to your question about the soloist, so I've gravitated away from it for, let's see, if I want to be honest, probably a variety of reasons. One, like the technical demands and the acrobatic playing of solo playing is really hard to keep up when real life is,
intervening.
Intervening, marriage, child, work. So figuring out that balance of how to keep music in your life, one of those answers for me was to play music with others. But aside from that, it's amazingly rewarding because you're in a musical exchange all of a sudden. You're not dictating everything. You've got to listen to what's going on in that moment, and you can hear the breath of your partner for that next note. I've learned with the cello will make a little bit of sound before the note is actually going to sound, and timing myself with that, and actually guitar will do that too. Like you can just tell, the sound of the previous note has been stopped, and the next one's coming. And I'll tell you, it's very difficult to make the recording that I made with Mary Akerman, because two guitars, their notes speak right away. There's no mushiness to the beginning of the note.
Okay.
And so when that's not timed perfectly, you hear it.
Right.
So you've got to cover all your bases with every entrance on everything. It's so it's rewarding, but there's a lot of work involved in making sure you get everything right.
So are you and Mary playing around? What are you guys doing?
I like to make an effort with Mary. Like we would have played this summer, but I'm traveling. So the last time we played was in the fall. We were actually down back at Florida State University for the first time in 25 years.
Wow.
Yeah,
that was a nice go back.
Yeah, it was great. I told my teacher, after we performed that, I said, Bruce, his name is Bruce Holzman, and the last time I played in this hall, I thought I was going to throw up. And it was nice to go back, 25 years later and, kind of slay the dragon.
Yeah. Well, we were talking again, before we started recording, and Bob had some similar experiences I did playing solo classical guitar. It's nerve-wracking.
Oh, yeah. It really can be.
Playing in an ensemble, there's a little less pressure on you.
Right. I was telling you that I like what John Williams, not the film composer, but the guitarist John Williams, he said that, when one person is playing, people are asking, how's he doing?
Yeah.
And then when two people are playing, people are saying, oh, how do you like the music?
Yeah.
So that's a real important distinction. I think it's maybe something natural for people to do. But when you're talking about the goal being to play music, it just becomes a natural place to be, at least for me.
I don't think anybody really gets into music to play alone. You get to play with others.
Yeah.
Whether it's rock music or whether it's classical or whether it's jazz, you're not like, hey, I just want to play by myself. I never really want to play with anybody.
Right.
I mean, that's not,
doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And being a soloist, and a friend of mine, he described it really well. I mean, he's very well-known concert guitar player, Jason Vio. He always described it as what I do for a living is a laser-focused living.
Uh-huh.
This is what I do.
Uh-huh.
I don't do all this other stuff. I do this. And he's damn good at it, but it's
he's one of the best. Yeah.
Yeah.
He really is. It's
but,
very special.
But everybody else who's not on that level to make it as a solo classical guitarist, we play ensemble. We do other things outside.
Well, and I would add to that the opportunities to play increase.
Yeah.
When you're playing with others, people want more interesting performances. They don't necessarily gravitate, unless you're a real guitar enthusiast. You might not go to a solo classical guitar concert.
True.
So only the very famous can bring the people out.
Yeah.
And so many times those people are traveling and playing concertos with orchestras anyway. So
Sure.
so you don't really get a chance to hear them play, in an intimate setting. So
And I can't even. I mean, I came up in classical some 20 years ago. Trying to, studying. I won't even say trying to make a living at it because I never really did. But I can't imagine coming up today because the players are, from what I understand, the level of playing is so high.
Mm-hmm.
The competition, but I'm not really sure people have the attention span for the repertoire.
Right.
When people turn on pop music and they hear a 3-minute song, and they get the hook right away. I'm not sure if somebody can sit there and listen through, a 5-movement Bach lute suite.
Right. And who's programming that in the real world?
Yeah.
You'll hear it still, right, at the big guitar festivals.
Sure.
Right, because that's a full-on guitar crowd.
Yeah. Yeah.
They want to hear it. They love it. So even length of program, when my wife and I are doing things, we were just talking about this last night. So she came up with a program, and my immediate reaction was, "It's too long." Sorry, honey. And it wasn't by much, but sometimes it's just that extra 5 minutes. So
Sure.
so I always err on the side of, get some nice music out there in the 45 to 50 minute range.
Yeah.
It'll last an hour and then have a good time with everybody.
And speaking, not to change subject, but speaking of performing with your wife,
Yeah.
you guys you do the duo with her.
Uh-huh.
And you also have the Bechtler Ensemble? Ensemble, excuse me?
I mean, I can clarify. So she started the Bechtler Ensemble, and it's sort of it's a modular group. So it's more of an entity, and she has a list of musicians that she calls upon. It's maybe, I want to say, maybe about 10 musicians.
Okay.
And depending on the situation, depending on the budget, she can put things together, trios.
Okay.
Is a piano available or is it not? And then I'm part of that as well. So if it just needs to be something for the two of us, we would go and perform under the umbrella of the Bechtler Ensemble. Yeah.
Okay.
So she runs the series downtown at the Bechtler Museum. She's in residence at Queens University, so that's been a nice relationship for us because that's where I'm teaching, of course, and she's had a long relationship with CPCC, and a lot of the programs that she's doing elsewhere will get performed at CPCC during the day for the students.
Okay.
So she plugs me in when it's appropriate to do so.
Oh, no, it sounds like a wonderful
Yeah,
ensemble. Do
it's
you guys do normal, do you staple classical rep? Do you guys break it up and do other kind of tunes?
It's I guess it's mostly classical rep, but she's open to anything.
Right.
I mean, some of it was like film music from Cinema Paradiso, arranged specifically for that was 2 guitars and cello when Mary Akerman was in town.
Okay.
That kind of thing. So it's all about what can we do when, and is it going to work,
Right.
for the budget, and how creative can we be, and to do something interesting.
Well, we've just been talking. You alluded to being at the colleges. So currently, let's clarify. You're at Queens University and you're at CPCC.
Mm-hmm. My full-time position is at Queens University, and I've been there since 2000. So it's been a long time, but not in a full-time capacity. It took a while for things to grow to that point.
Mm-hmm.
And in the meantime, maybe 10 or 12 years ago, I started working at CPCC.
Okay.
And so as things have grown more at Queens, that's my anchoring position. But to keep the relationship with the students at CPCC has been good for all of us, because those students often want to go to the next step, and they often end up in our program at Queens. So it's been a great fit. Yeah.
So what's the programs? Are they the actual guitar studies? Is there a whole program that you guys have designed? Is it just lessons? How does that work?
So, well, the students that are seeking just a straight ahead degree in music, well, everybody, as you know, will declare a primary instrument. So of course, I would be teaching all the primary guitar students. Sure. So for them, what that involves is they would all have applied study or one-on-one instruction with me. They have to perform a recital every semester, and then guitar-related courses of interest. And this has been like part of that development over the years, just to make sure we have content, for our students. So we have guitar ensemble, which gives group reading experience and ensemble playing, like we've been talking about, just to have that experience. We have a course called Guitar Seminar, which I really like. So the students arrange or compose something and put it into some sort of applicable software. So there's a technical component, and then they have to teach it to my ensemble, and then they have to lead it during the performance. So that I just love the whole thing, because you can see the leadership skills developing and that the presence on stage and that kind of thing. And you can just imagine that the next step for them will be, to find their groups to teach as they go forward. We also have guitar pedagogy, which is, just a great opportunity for me, because we can have this dialogue about information, and because we want to be preparing students with a roadmap to teach, because so many of us do. Yeah, right. And that's one of the rewarding things that we can do, and actually make a living. Yeah. And then guitar literature is part of that too. So there's the possibility of a concentration in performance or pedagogy.
Okay. So you get guitar. They go to well-rounded guitar education, as well as of course everything outside their normal studies. Right.
And then there's the large meaty part of our program are our music therapy students. And that is like the part of my job that requires that I play other styles, so because I have to prepare those students to be able to play repertoire from the 1930s on, and it's popular style music. So every single music therapy student has to become proficient in guitar.
Okay, so that's part of their curriculum.
It is
coming over, and they're not necessarily playing classical. They're just kind of learning.
No, unless there may be a music therapy student who's a guitar primary, then they would be in both tracks.
Okay, that's pretty neat.
So yeah, it's pretty demanding, and it's it could be a whole nother conversation. Get one of our music therapy instructors out here.
No, they would love to talk to you about it. Yeah, I'd love to talk to somebody. I mean, just finding out all the things that go on in town is very nice, and just letting people know that, hey, there is some kind of classical stuff going on in Charlotte. Because when I got here, like I said to you earlier before we were recording, I came from Cleveland, and we had just started, there was trying to get some kind of guitar society going here, in Cleveland. And when I came here, there was nothing. Right. And there still isn't. There's no classical guitar society. There's outside of Charlotte, there is. But nothing in the immediate area, which I'd love to see a little bit more of.
I would too. I mean, one of us needs to grab the reins and go. And I keep thinking that it's something that I should be a part of at some point. And so maybe we'll go in that direction. Maybe this interview starts the conversation.
We'll have to talk about it later. Man, I'm sure between your schedule and mine, it'd be like, we have 10 minutes on a Tuesday night in March to talk about things and get things together. But we'll definitely talk about it.
we were talking earlier about the new facility at Queens.
Yes.
This $22 million project, renovation of the Fine Arts Building. And I think that's going to perhaps, give us a reason to go in that direction, because we're going to have beautiful spaces to do work in and have music. So
is that currently under renovation, or when does that start?
I think they break ground next month.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
What's their expected build time? Do you know?
We're supposed to be out of the building for a year.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. So we just moved out in the last few weeks. Yeah.
Where'd they stick you? They give you a trailer on the side.
I like the wording in that question. They were very creative about getting us like kind of centralized in another building, and some other faculty members were nice enough to swap places, and so we're camping out in another building for a year.
No, I don't mean it in any disrespect in that way, because I remember being in Cleveland and they had taken down the old hall, and they were like, well, if you don't have anywhere to practice, when I was at the Cleveland Institute of Music, they were redoing one of the halls. Yeah. And they were like, okay, well, you guitar players, you don't really need the rooms. So you need to go over here, or you practice at home, and you get stuck someplace else. Uh-huh. And I'm not saying they did this at Queens, it's just knowing guitar players, you are kind of low on the totem pole when it comes to
or that we don't need a room with a piano. Yeah. So there's but the other thing is we usually don't mind.
Yeah. Yeah. We're kind of used to it.
Or we're a friendly bunch. We know we can do our work anywhere.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I remember studying, and somebody would always just say, why are you guitar players just the coolest people in the program? Because we're normal. We're not used to just sitting in a room for 18 hours or playing our instruments. We actually went out.
That was one of the things I really loved about going to school, especially graduate school. Was to be around like-minded people, and I suppose there was an element of competitiveness, but there was also camaraderie, and many, many, many conversations about fingerings and how to do things, and how did you solve this problem? I'm having trouble with this, and the conversations are constant. Fingernail conversations. Oh God!
If you're listening and you don't know what he's talking about, classical guitarists grow out their nails, and most of us, of course, are right-handed. So if you're playing with your right hand, you can usually tell a classical guitar player their left-hand nails are short. The left-hand nails are short. Their right-hand nails are longer, so that you can grip the strings because you're playing finger style.
Yep.
So
there it is.
Always talking about how to shape them and nail them.
And now I'm all fake.
Well, they're not painted, so you're all right. If you were, I'd say you're in goth band or something. So, Bob, we've been talking about. We've been talking about your teaching. We've been talking about you're as a performer, but you're also a composer.
Yeah, I guess I am. Although I wouldn't call myself a trained composer. You would bring this up.
That's my job.
I guess, no. I started out with some occasional efforts. It's not something that comes out of me easily. So,
sure.
So I have to really kind of pull things out. So I've written a few things and published a few things. I suppose I'm most proud of the music that has a pedagogical reason for existing. Mm-hmm. And I use them in my own playing, and I can see how they've affected my own playing, so I can steer students in that direction. I suppose you could say that, it's easy to hide compositionally behind, a piece a little bit with a pedagogical intent rather. Because you could say, well, it's an okay piece, but it works the hand.
Well, the set I was thinking about was your 5 etudes that you have published. Are they pedagogical in nature?
Oh yeah,
developed certain techniques.
Yeah, it's all right hand development, and it's sort of an outgrowth of Shearer kinds of thinking.
Okay.
He was my last teacher, and left me with some things that I did, that I had to explore for a while on my own. And then how we build on the shoulders of others. I think if you couldn't figure out a way to do that, you wouldn't have a reason for doing it, because you would just use existing materials. So these pieces, they're a little bit more modern sounding, a little bit more hooky for young people that may be transitioning. and they use the right hand in slightly different ways that you might not expect. So just further manipulation.
Is that the only set of things that you've written, or have you written more and recorded more?
Another piece that I wrote was a tremolo etude, which uses, like, most of the time when people get interested in tremolo, which I guess for your listeners we could explain, is a technique of repeated notes over a moving bass line. So it almost sounds like two guitar players, or the mandolin player, quickly playing notes up and down with a pick. So it's a technique that's often used and very interesting to students. And usually we fall in love with it and we dive right into the most difficult piece we can find. And it's really, there's so much to overcome.
Oh my gosh.
So this piece is written with a very easy left hand intention, so that you can focus on the right hand. But it's not all straight tremolo. It breaks tremolo up into its component parts, and that's written into the music, and that's an idea that I got from Mary Ackerman. So I don't want to bore your listeners with all the details, but just imagine that a pattern gets broken up and you have a different starting finger each time, and you will quickly realize that there's one of those sequences will demonstrate a weakness in your hand, and that's the one you need to work on.
Oh, man. You're bringing me back 20 years
I'm
ago.
sorry.
I was trying to play a year or two ago, a little over a year ago. So I was getting back into just playing some classical guitar. And I said, I've never learned recuerdos. I'm going to go practice. And I relentlessly was practicing my tremolo technique. And I blew out my extensors.
Oh.
And man, it's pretty much taken me almost a year just to get everything healed up to this day. So for even now, I'm like, I'm going to hold off on the tremolo for a while and just, get that going. Because that was painful.
It can be, and it can take a long time to heal.
Yeah.
So it's an important lesson to learn, and not saying anything about your age because you're younger than I am, but we do have to keep that in mind as we get a little older. We can't just dive into things, but students can't do it either.
Yeah.
They often make that mistake where, like, it's the beginning of the semester, everybody's charged, and you dive into the practice room and you go from 1 hour to 5 hours of practice without any build up to that. And we have to be really careful, and we have to really guide our students.
You don't even think about it as a player. It doesn't matter if you're a guitar player or not, but there's a certain amount of athleticism that you need to, and stretching your muscles and warming up and playing before you decide to, like you're saying, jump into 5 hours of practice. You really hurt yourself like I did.
Yeah.
So, what do you have coming up for yourself?
Well, not that this is happening all the time, because my playing is sporadic through the year. I like to try to play about maybe a dozen times a year, like in concert kinds of settings. But I'm playing with my wife at a concert at the end of the week, not locally. It's up in Chicago, and it should be a fun time. There's an aside thing that I'm looking forward to is the guy that made my guitar lives up there.
Oh, okay. Who's the builder?
Steve Walter.
Okay, I haven't heard him, no.
He's a wonderful up and coming guy, still in the medium price range. So it's
if you don't know, classical guitars can get kind of expensive. I mean, now they're just
everything.
If you want a decent instrument, professional instrument, you're anywhere from $5,000 to 15 or to 20 now.
Most of the major name makers are over 10 nowadays, and Steve's guitars are still reasonably priced, and they're just beautiful. What you get for that, for his I think his price range now is around $7,500, which is still a lot.
Yeah,
and I say up and coming maker. He's pretty well established. He sells everything he makes.
We talk about it like it is a lot of money, but compared to, and having gone to school with other musicians, I mean, violinists, You want a professional sounding violin? I mean, I knew somebody like my violin's okay. It was about $100,000, but and you're like, oh my God.
I know it's a mortgage. It's a mortgage.
You know, and you're like, I got away with $5,000 and I got this guitar and it sounds nice. You know?
Yeah, my son asked me, he says, Dad, why do you have a bunch of guitars and Mom only has one cello?
Because all these don't even equal out to the price of those instruments.
Right.
Oh
but just to finish on the so this guy's there, his son took up the cello, and so we're talking cellos are very expensive.
Yeah.
So he said, you know what, I'll make him one.
Oh.
So he made a cello, and he's just a good maker, very intuitive, and so he's going to loan that instrument to us, so we're going to get to play the concert on his instruments.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, so it'll be fun. Yeah.
Now, speaking of performing, do you do faculty recitals at Queens and
yeah,
CPCC?
we do. So sometimes it's part of a general faculty program we'll just put together, and then other times it'll be something that I've brought in. So if I can have Mary Akerman up and we'll do a duo concert,
right.
or my wife and we'll do a duo concert. The composition guy, Dr. Zach Zubo, he writes some interesting things. So
okay.
so we can play original works on, in one of his concerts. Do you
have to guide him on guitar stuff? Because
he knows the guitar pretty well, and hasn't written anything that I have to really moan about yet.
That might not be easy to do on a guitar.
Yeah,
because that's a complaint for most guitar players or in the classical realm is they have to help the composers because not everybody's familiar with how the guitar works. It
right.
seems strange, but in classical world, that's kind of par for the course.
Right. It's a difficult instrument to write for if you don't understand it.
Yeah.
And so he does, and that's a great gift to me, and like you said, injury is a thing, and I know where my limits are. So if I get a hold of something, I'll give it a good honest try, but if I feel like it's going to start to hurt me, I will let them know.
Yeah, I can play this, and I know this is not. No, I can't stretch 10 frets.
Right.
Oh my goodness, it's hysterical. Well, anything else you want to talk about, Bob? What you got?
Yeah, I'm gonna put out a shout out to you actually.
Thank you.
Because you got in touch with me, and I just really admire what you're doing. I just thoroughly loved the segment on Bill Hanna because that's. There's so much there that we need to hear him say, you know, and you wouldn't get that in a single conversation with him otherwise, I've known him for years and I get bits and pieces,
right.
And he's just such a great musical force for this area. And so thank you for documenting that.
Oh, my pleasure.
And among the others,
It's my pleasure. I mean, it's as I was explaining to you earlier, just to kind of get a little more cohesiveness in what's going on in the Charlotte area for music. I mean, there's so much,
right?
And unless somebody might be specifically just looking for classical guitar, they might not know you were here.
Mm-hmm.
And building, it's like some people forget that he's still around playing.
Yeah.
So it's good to let people know what's happening in the city and that we have these resources in the musicians and the artisans and locales that people can go to for music. So it's wonderful to be able to do it.
Yeah, thank you.
To do it.
Yeah.
How can people get in touch with you?
Well, I can be found at the Queens website. Can also be reached through the Bechtler Ensemble.
Okay.
And I mean,
do you have a website of your own or no?
I don't even use one anymore. Yeah,
okay.
All
right, so I'll put a link in the show notes to the Bechtler and to your
BechtlerEnsemble.com or or Queens, Queens.edu.
Okay.
Teixeira R at Queens.edu. Yeah.
All right, cool, man.
Good luck spelling my last name.
Hey, I had to ask you how to pronounce it. I thought I had it right. I'm usually pretty good, but I had the pronunciation off. So no problem.
It's easy. There's so many ways to pronounce it. If you're Portuguese, you say it this way. If you're American, you say it this way. So.
Well, thank you again Bob for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it, man.
Thank you, Matthew.
All right, have a great day.
You too.
Bye. And that will bring episode 10 of the Queen City Music Podcast to a close. If you are a musician or otherwise involved in the music scene here in our fair city and would like to be a guest on the QCMP, reach out to me at qcmusicpodcast@gmail.com. Remember, you can find our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and iHeartRadio, not to mention a batch of other places. So keep a lookout. Until then, get out there and support your local music scene. See you next month. Bye.